this video, we're going to look at how to create a service contract. A service contract is an agreement between our company and one of our customers to perform some repeat planned maintenance works at one of their sites. And the service contract within TeamPoint manages this agreement. It manages the creation of jobs, invoices, and we can also use the service contract as part of the sales process to renew that agreement when it comes to an end. So to create a new one, we find the new option on our menu on the left and we select service contract. This is the form to enter a new service contract. The first thing we need to do is to find our site. So we search in our site database and find the site. We're just going to use a test site. Once the site's loaded, we get some summary information about this site just to help us, to give us some additional information. So that's the summary information here, open jobs, open quotes, all those kind of things. So let's start filling out the service contract details. We can enter a contract summary if we want. So let's say contract to cover all planned maintenance works. Next, we're looking at entering the start and end date. So the start date controls when this service contract becomes active. So we might want to put it with a date in the future if we're not ready to start that work for a couple of months, or we can put it today and this will kick in immediately. The end date covers or is mainly used to drive the contract renewal process. So if we have an end date here, we've got a 10-year contract, for instance, we could set up a 1-year contract, a 3-year contract, a 5-year contract, whatever we like. And we use end date 1 to stop those services being generated automatically when we get to the end of our contract, but also before we get to the end of our contract, it manages the contract renewal process. So there's certain sales messages and alerts that are triggered by this end date. We'll look at those in another video. Here we're just looking at how to create the contract. The status, there are a few different statuses here which have various different uses. Again, we'll cover some of the other ones in a different video. For now, we'll just put it as live. So it's just a live contract. And we'll choose a salesperson. We can enter a purchase order number, and we'll also set the invoice type. Now, we'll cover the invoice type in a minute. Let's add some services onto our contract first. So this is the service section down here. To add additional services, we just click the plus button. So we'll do that. This window is now opened to allow us to enter the details of the services that we want to perform as part of this contract. So let's choose a service item first. Let's say fire alarm, test and service. Quantity is going to be 1. The price, let's put that in at 500. The division is not particularly important right now. The equipment. So if we have assets registered against our site and this service relates to a specific asset, then we can choose that piece of equipment here. It's optional. So if it were a PAT test, for instance, which is doing lots of small pieces of equipment, we would probably leave this blank. But as this one is a fire alarm test and service, we may want to choose the particular fire alarm that we want to service. And as long as that's recorded against the site, we can do that. So let's say this is the fire alarm in the main building, for instance. Grouping, this allows us to group different service items onto the same jobs. If we want the same technician to do multiple items on the same visit, if we don't, we can put a different grouping against them, and then they could be allocated to different people. We'll come to that later as well in another video. So we'll leave group blank for the time being. So now we're looking at the mode. So the mode is basically how often we need to repeat this particular thing. So it might be monthly, it might be twice per month, it could be weekly, it could be repeat, which we'll look at in a second, or it could be daily. So for my fire alarm service, I want to do it once a year. So I'm going to put this down as repeat. And I want to repeat this every 365 days. My next service I'm going to set is due on the 1st of next month. We can add a description here, which will get pulled into the job. So let's put test and service fire alarm in main building. So that will get pulled into our job for our technician to see. So we can save that. So I've now added a service item onto my contract. Now, very often a contract is going to cover multiple items. So let's add another one. So now we have a fire alarm service, and that's going to happen once a year, every 365 days. And the next visit is on the 1st of October. Let's add another item. So the next thing we're going to put on here is a Legionella test. And let's put a price against that. And let's choose our equipment. So we're going to put this against the water tank, which we have registered on site. And this one, we're going to do it monthly. We're going to do it on, so we can choose which week of the month we'd like to do this on ideally. Could be the 1st, 2nd, 3rd or 4th. So let's leave this on 1st. And I'm now going to choose which months that I want to service this equipment. So I'm going to choose March, June, September, and December. So this is a quarterly service effectively. And we'll save this item. So we can now see down here, we've got our water sampling Legionella test once a month in the first week of the month. This is going to happen in March, June, September, and December. We'll add one more item. This is going to be a pat testing. We'll put a price on there. We're not going to select equipment because there's going to be many small items of equipment, so there's not really any need for that. And this one, let's say this one is going to be twice a year, and let's put this one in January and July, for instance. So we'll save that. So we've now added our 3 items that this service contract covers at this site at the top. So the only thing left for us to do is to look at the invoicing type. So this is the thing that we left earlier on. So the default is invoice after service. And what that means is these jobs will be generated as they're required. So this one will create a job for me probably in December to be performed in January, probably in June to be performed in July. The jobs will have the value that we put on the lines. And once the job is completed, it will go through invoicing in the normal way. So the job gets complete and then the job gets invoiced. That's invoice after service. The alternative is prepaid. So let's have a quick look at that. So if we select prepaid, what this means is that the service contract will be invoiced separately from the jobs. So it may be, for instance, here we have a 1 yearly visit, here we have a quarterly visit, and here we have a biannually visit. It might be that we just choose to invoice the whole contract every month, for instance. So we're suggesting the contract is suggesting that we need to invoice £241.67 per month. So it might be that I put £200 a month and say that my next invoice is due on the 1st. We can also set a nominal code for integrating with our accounts package. We're not worried too much about that. Invoice description might just be monthly PPM charge. So by choosing prepaid, what we're doing is we're separating our invoicing from the works that we do. If we choose invoice after service, then the work gets invoiced as soon as the work is completed. If we choose prepaid, then we can choose how much to bill every month. And we don't have to bill the exact number that matches here. It might be that we want to invoice more or invoice less. We get a little warning at the top. This is how much it thinks we should be invoicing. So if our monthly invoice matches, then this goes green just to let us know that we've done the right thing. But we may have an agreement to invoice more or to invoice less. Let's say we choose to invoice £500 and we want to invoice that every other month. So we can set our invoicing up to do whatever we need to satisfy the service contract in the same way that we can set up our works to happen at any time. So that's how you set up a service contract in TeamPoint. You choose your site, you set the start and end dates for the contract. We choose the invoicing type for the contract, whether that's invoice after service or prepaid. And we choose the services that we want to perform and the regularity or the interval of each service.